All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Post Pandemic IT Strategies for 2021 and Beyond. My name is Frederico. I'm a tech specialist here at Okta.
And my name is Molly Huh, and I'm a product marketer at Okta. Federico will start us off today with 2020 in numbers. We all know that COVID has taken a lot out of us, but what does that actually mean for the adoption of technology and for enterprises around us? I will share three long term opportunities, talk about trends as it relates to IT, and then share a story about a customer who has been on that long term journey with us. And then Federico will pick it back up and talk about the tactical things that you can do to implement some of those IT trends and close it out with some of the more project level things that you can implement today in your IT organization.
Something very important about this session is that we're going to talk more about trends and about the big forest and separating forests from the trees. So, out of scope today are technical deep dives. However, when I jump into going tactical and the things you can do, the projects you can implement with identity, we're going to provide links for you so you can launch materials, white papers, ebooks with more instructions and guidances on how you can apply those projects in real life. So let's start with what got us here. And this cartoon pretty much summarizes what happened last year, right? COVID was in a driving seat of many of our IT and security, information security decisions of last year in digitization. However, something very important to notice is the pace or how much of transformation or IT uh, changes we got because of COVID. McKinsey put up a research last year called How COVID Has Pushed Companies Over the Technology Tipping Point and Transformed Business Forever. And these are three numbers that came up from there that help us materialize all the transformation, all the changes that happened last year. I guess the most staggering number you can see here is that we leaped 6 years forward last year. So if we didn't have COVID, it was basically the equivalent of living 2027 all in 1 year. And if you work in IT and security, the pace of innovation before in 2019, 2018 was already pretty incredible. We were living, let's say, the light speed. And last year, we actually accelerated that to the ludicrous speed, let's say, when the light speed is just too slow. That's not only confirmed on trends you already heard about, like work from home or like having a digital source of income for many companies. It transformed everything across the board. So you can see in many different ways how new projects that uses IT, that uses information security, got accelerated by multiples here. So when you look back and you think about 2019, 2018, these were the challenges we used to have as IT and security leaders. You had technical debt to think about, many systems you need to retire, you need to roll over to change for new innovative ideas or strategies. You have the self service of SaaS, the war for talent, finding good, great developers, IT administrators, InfoSec professionals, and also as a professional acquiring new skills and technologies, so learning the new framework, the great new SaaS solution to help you get there and serve your customers and employees. However, many of those, remember that 6 years, got accelerated at the same pace. So if you think about early 2020 in end of year, I bet you have many more technologies you had to think about or learn about. You had many new digital products showing up the door. And in addition to all these vectors you already know about, we got also enabling remote work and even transitioning for many organizations from a incident response business continuity kind of mindset, just trying to bring whatever technology was possible to get people to work from home into more definitive technologies. So it could be, for example, replacing VPN with a better solution for someone working on HR or working on finance that doesn't have all that knowledge about network. Many people may see this as a crisis or as something that really puts pressure on work, but the most innovative organizations in the greatest professionals I know, they never waste a good crisis. And there are many opportunities you can take advantage of to set yourself apart as a professional or as an organization. More specifically, Molly will cover three of those.
Thanks, Federico. So, I want to talk about three broad opportunity areas that we see across security, modernization, and digital experiences, and how identity can help take your organizations to the next level. In each of these opportunities, I will walk through, how you should think about the more immediate and the long-term strategies, and then illustrate a customer that's on that journey. My goal here is not to give you an exhaustive list of things that you should be doing or thinking about, but to really offer some prescriptive guidance on how we can connect these trends to the value of identity, and then how can you connect your work to strategic IT. If there's one thing that you take away from this section, is that the power identity in shaping your organization's strategic goals. So, opportunity one is dynamic work. During the pandemic, there were a lot of technology purchases made to solve temporary needs. I mean, we all thought we were going to go back to the office after a few weeks, and everyone was just trying to figure out how to keep the lights on. Much of that spend went into enabling and connecting end users, and now organizations are having to sit down to reevaluate if the models that they implemented in 2020 are going to stay for the long haul. And many are saying, how do I go back and secure this? So, dynamic work is not just about enabling remote work, but it's about preparing for the future of work in general, whether it's remote, it's in the office, or somewhere in between. And it's about bridging that digital and physical worlds for a more seamless and adaptive workforce in the long run. In the short term, first and foremost, it's about continuing to think about how you can enhance employee productivity. Did you just turn on remote work, or do you have a remote work strategy? This means optimizing self service tools like password resets so they're not eating away from your organization's free time. It means be really people focused and BFFs with your end users to understand how they're using the technologies they are to collaborate, and whether it's making them productive or it's just becoming another process. It means better and more communication with your organization on technology resources and how do you make them more productive. Providing that awareness and training on upcoming rollouts, what's expected from people. Hearing this, you might be like, yeah, yeah. But from the more successful customers that we have from the rollout, they credited proactive communication as a big reason that IT implementation was successful in their organizations. Next is optimizing remote enablement. Putting digital support structures in place now more than ever. Organizations need to build flexibility, but also empathy into these structures to enable remote work and dynamic work. It's about people more than ever. And that's what's going to define your relevance in your organization. So, for example, if we think about how HR is reimagining hiring process, they're hiring from all over the globe instead of just concentrating on a city. How are you going to support that goal? It could be by establishing a single source of truth across the company, supporting new ways of engaging with candidates. The possibilities are endless, but it's about how do we enable a digital support structures for that long-term strategy. And lastly, it's about streamlining lifecycle management. Employees will join the organization, they will move around, and they will leave the organization. How do you keep tabs on that in a very efficient way? Some quick wins here include automating onboarding and offboarding, automating identity processes so that it decreases security risk from human errors, and it increases the productivity between groups. As we think more long term, I love this quote by a CISO from Okta that says, identity management, when done right, is not just an IT service, like granting access, service tickets, resetting passwords, but rather, identity management is a control. Like, how do I know it's you? Why do you need access? Independently provisioning, and so forth. If you're running identity as an IT service in the long run in your organization, you're not running it optimally. And the second, it's about zero trust. The corporate security parameter no longer exists, and the world is getting a lot more complex. Zero trust is about delivering that productivity and security with the least friction possible. So that means that the right people have the right level of access to the right resources in the right context that is assessed continuously. If you're not thinking about security controls rooted in identity, you should. I'll share more about FedEx's journey with Zero Trust, and Federico will talk more about road mapping your Zero Trust plan a bit later on. FedEx is a great example of this. They were already working with Okta on identity before the pandemic, but in the middle of a phased project, FedEx really needed to accelerate the deployment timelines in order to enable remote work for its global workforce. Identity was important to FedEx from the get go, but because it had a global footprint and decades of just technology accumulation, like legacy systems, mainframe applications, and just various M&A integrations over the years, identity management became a beast of a thing to get right and was a source of friction for a lot of folks internally. One of FedEx's challenges was that it has spent 20 years spinning up best of breed identity point solutions. They were running a VPN with an on prem NFA, on prem federation, and on prem web access management. The system was largely held by the duct tape that you saw in Federico's slide, and developers have to really split their time fixing this duct tape while coding for the future. And from a very operational standpoint, a FedEx sales guy might log onto the system 5 different times in order to start the day and be productive. And so, in the process of modernizing and simplifying its infrastructure, FedEx also had the broad goal of wanting to implement its zero trust security model, since passwords alone are no longer adequate for protecting FedEx identities and their digital assets. Their strategy came with a few key components. Signing in was the first step in the zero trust strategy. Okta's support of modern authentication protocols means that it can support FedEx apps whether they are SaaS, cloud native, or legacy applications. And then it's about providing the right context for access. The FedEx security team manages conditional access across the company, and this really empowers IT to tailor the sign-in experience depending on the risks that they perceive. Device trust was also an important building block in making sure that each device that's accessing company apps demonstrates good security posture. The final block of FedEx's zero trust strategy is user behavior analytics. FedEx uses machine learning to mine the rich identity data that they collect from Okta and then using it to identify suspicious behavior and make proactive policy decisions. And by doing so, FedEx was able to activate a remote workforce in record time while implementing a long-term best practices that's rooted in zero trust and security. Over a 36-hour period during the pandemic, FedEx was able to move 7 essential apps over to Okta so that almost 350,000 employees can work remotely with immediate access. In the long term, by unifying this identity across the whole organization, the IT team manages access across with a single engine. And FedEx is positioned to start decommissioning some of these legacy identity point solutions, integrate SaaS, cloud native, and on prem apps into a single identity service that is backed by zero trust security. If you're interested in learning more about FedEx's implementation in detail, we have another Octane session later today that you can check out. The second opportunity area is IT consolidation. This is going to be a very important word in 2021 IT. Lots of customers made purchasing decisions based on short-term needs and assumptions based on how they thought 2020 would progress. The pandemic also defied all IT leader expectations on the implementation timeline, as you can see from Federico's slide a bit earlier. They expected over a year to respond to areas like data security, migration of assets to the cloud, advanced technologies, and decision making. And now with COVID, that implementation is happening in less than a month. So it's about consolidation to move faster and to respond to the market needs. As we think about the short term, it's about thinking about IT consolidation. What are the trade-offs you're going to make? How are you going to empower your organization on things that start with you, like processy changes? These are yours to define and align with the rest of the organization. And it's about how do you take IT to be more proactive in identifying these solutions versus taking a more reactive approach. For example, a security breach or a CEO mandate. I want to caveat that IT consolidation can mean a lot of different things. These short-term guidance apply to things like optimizing what a SaaS collaboration tool your organization should use. But that's a relatively straightforward to round up. Now is the time to actually think deeply about what's going to go move the dial, and much of that is in the cloud and on-prem relationship that IT has maintained and aptly circumvented over the years. From that same McKinsey executive survey, the expected timeline to implement migration to the cloud was 1.5 years, according to CIOs, whereas the reality of the pandemic is that actual implementation timeline shortened that to just 23 days. So, in the short term, it's about taking an inventory of existing practices. There are different approaches, but for the big systems, the best immediate path for most organizations, unless there's already an existing initiative to consolidate or move off of legacy systems, is about enabling and secure what will stay, retire what has lost value, and rethink what is holding you back. In the first one, there are things like on-prem ERP and HRM systems that will stay as they are. The question is that how do you make sure they don't fall behind? And how are you going to take that modern security and identity investment and bring these legacy systems and environments into the fold? Because they're not going away anytime soon. Second is retiring what has lost value. On the other side of this thinking are like the systems, these are pretty ripe for retirement. Let's put a plan together in place to get these off of our plates because we're not going to get a lot of business value, but we are incurring a tremendous amount of expense. A good example here is web access management systems like SiteMinder. They're very expensive and you're at a place in the market where you can migrate. And lastly, thinking about what's holding you back. With COVID forcing organizations to really evaluate what is truly business critical, it becomes more important than ever to think about it from the lens of planning for future growth and not current needs. Because IT investments should be a leading indicator, not a lagging one. For identity, IT consolidation is about unifying that identity experience across cloud, on-prem, and hybrid. We at Okta are known for being that vendor that help you secure and manage your SaaS applications and delivering a lot of business value on authentication, multi-factor, securing APIs in pure cloud environments. And this is pretty easy to do for cloud apps because they support all the open standards and SSO, and it's just a matter of user adoption. For unifying across cloud and on-prem, it's got to be simple, and you're going to have to be able to make it work without changing the application itself. Unification of identity doesn't mean that everything needs to roll up to the cloud. It means that having that single view of your data so that you can choose where to best execute it, whether it's in the cloud or at the edge. The cloud is really good for things like machine learning, compute, and where you need scale. But edge also has its benefits on offloading when you have bandwidth issues, when you need real-time response, and when you need to filter out that data before it gets into the cloud. As we think about modernization strategies to help you future-proof your IT organization, we came up with the identity 6Rs. So in the first two stages, which is rehost and revise, these stages are simply moving an application or workload to the cloud without much optimization. Sometimes moving to a cloud can open up even more vulnerabilities, and Okta can help in these stages by helping you replace your on-prem identity components with cloud-native hybrid IT access management or revising outdated web access management systems. And if you're thinking about a customer-facing scenario, it's about swapping out that legacy or homegrown identity service with a customer identity solution. And then you can link that user directory directly with your CRM and establish that 360 view of your customer. In the next two stages of Rearchitect and Rebuild, This is more about embracing the cloud for scale, performance, and many times breaking the applications from monolith into APIs and microservices. Okta can help in these stages by managing and securing access to resources like APIs and cloud infrastructure. So that's a secure, seamless collaboration across your teams like operations, security, data science, and engineering. The next stage is replace. And this is really about the best of SaaS ecosystem and using enterprise technologies with the quality that you expect from consumer technologies. Okta and an identity platform can help in this stage by establishing that single source of truth across the organization and making it easy to extend and build on top of if you choose to. And this is especially helpful as you think about a company going through M&A and the pressure to integrate quickly around siloed systems, mitigating security attack surface areas, and just reducing overall total cost of ownership and IT spend. Experian is a really great customer example for this. They started as a credit reporting agency and then has since transformed into a direct consumer technology company focused on data and data-driven experiences. But at the core of what Experian does is this need to secure authentication every step of the way because it's so important to build that relationship with the end user. And identity management is the foundation to do so. Experience challenges was that different groups at the company used different identity solutions, and developers had no common set of tools to build products in a consistent way. And then so this led Experian to be unable to respond to customer and partner demands when they asked for more sophisticated data services. In order to standardize building products across the company, identity consolidation had to happen first. It needed to be really flexible enough to handle all of Experian's broad mix of internal apps, as well as their growing portfolio of customer and partner-facing ones. So first, Experian rolled out its first consumer app as a pilot to test out how the market would respond. Then they rolled out identity to the entire workforce to connect HR systems, marketing platforms, and so on. IT was able to shut down many fragmented legacy on-prem solutions. And by consolidating 6 disparate identity vendors, Experian was able to get rid of 6 different contracts, 6 different types of servers to maintain and patch, and this contributes to over $8 million in IT savings over a 5-year horizon. Third, after this was piloted by consumers and rolled out to internal workforce, Experian IT focused on their business customers, and these are the big money makers, to make their access and onboarding just as efficient and speedy. And that's what's allowed for retailers like Target or Home Depot to be able to ask you, would you like to apply for a store credit card at checkout? And they're able to pull up your credit right then and there. Immediately, Experian saw enthusiastic response internally with less than a year for a rollout for all employees, customers, and partners. In the long run, identity has really empowered Experian to join the API economy and create that bigger, bolder business model for the company and continuing to paint the vision for what is possible with identity. This helps Experian to be of higher brand value as they go into new product areas and new revenue streams for their customers. This brings me to opportunity 3, which is customer-centric digital experiences. The market is really transformed by a few different factors here. It is one, accelerated by the consumerization of enterprises. So this means that the consumers are expecting from their enterprise software to have very similar qualities and user experience to what they would use in their personal lives. For IT orgs, if you're just focusing on protecting your employees, you're missing out on a big portion of IT potential. And secondly, we see a sort of IT cultural shift. IT organizations are shifting more from a you can't do that to now empowering their peers and business groups to accelerate that innovation, which is a great opportunity, a career opportunity for IT professionals because good IT works inside and outside the IT organization. In the short term, it's about applying learnings from workforce identity to customer identity. And a lot of it is thinking about how do you secure a customer experience without compromising it. We see many companies start their identity journey for employees and then taking that learning and eventually scaling it to customer identities. I talked about zero trust as a strategy a bit earlier on for solving that like changing security landscape. The challenge for customer identity is that these controls were never really there, so zero trust doesn't really apply. But identity driven security does. And we can still apply very similar principles from zero trust, but we will just use different risk signals. What you need is a way to be able to manage that risk for your customers. You can't ever control your customers' network access, for example, but fraud is a very big problem. How do you prevent that? Second is, a flywheel for experimentation. You can't build great experiences if you don't know what the customers want. Start to collect and connect customer data while improving customer retention. Studies shown that personalization can boost total sales by 15 to 20%, and having a single view of the customer by integrating the identity with other applications like marketing systems, CRMs, and content management can be a big differentiator for your business. And data cleanliness as a KPI. As you think about, integrating these data views from the different parts of the business, ensuring that data is good data and that view is standardized across the company to offer you a single source of truth on a customer. And lastly, set standards of procedures. I hear this a lot from our most successful customers, and it's about aligning as an organization on a standard taxonomy and standard operating procedures for identity. It's about proactively bringing in legal, compliance, and security teams early on in this journey to help you collaborate on your customer experiences. In the long term, customer centric experiences is about establishing trust as a differentiator. Trust is such a crucial driver in modern day customer expectations for digital experiences. In fact, Forbes found that 70% of customers abandon transactions due to concerns about security, and 80% said that they would stop engaging with a company altogether if the company experienced a breach. This is especially important in highly regulated industries like healthcare and financial services, and government agencies. Trust is even more important when interacting with customers and for government citizen services. It's about delivering one consistent experience across the platform. We saw this from the Experian example, but providing that one consistent technology foundation enables the organization to build out and roll out digital experiences with the greatest ROI. Identity and IT organizations are well positioned to lead this at your organization. And lastly, it's all about the money. Identity is complex and it's often equated with cost reductions and IT efficiency. But the companies who truly utilize identity as the foundation for their overall organizations are able to see how they're able to use identity as a differentiator and a revenue generator. Let me show you how Takeda is able to use identity to deliver that consistent experience and open up business opportunities with identity. So Takeda is a top 10 pharmaceutical company. They're based in Japan. They're also one of the oldest, and they were founded over 200 years ago. Takeda's business model has traditionally just dealt with doctors when they needed inventory for their clinics. But when COVID hit, they really saw an opportunity to shift that focus to direct engagements with patients, healthcare providers, and caregivers. Because of the nature of Takeda's business, the brand is heavily based on trust and reputation. And these are core company values that Takeda prioritizes as they think about the role identity plays and how they interact with their patients. Takeda's challenge came twofold. One is around the inefficiencies of what they are doing, and two is around the lost potential of what they're not doing. So historically, each of Takeda's many commercial brands that needed customer IDs have created their own solutions and processes. And this resulted in a bunch of disconnected and repeated efforts that basically solve the same requirement of logging in. And this left the customers with really subpar experiences because it's disjointed. They need to log in different times if they use different Takeda products. And secondly, for the first time, digital was a company strategic priority. COVID had a huge negative effect on the ability for Takeda to carry out their mission. For example, volunteers don't really want to donate plasma in person anymore, and clinical trials for vaccines cannot be done in person during COVID. And Takeda wanted to look for new ways to engage with the public and expand its reach. So, as a result, Takeda saw digital as a path to growth and not just survival. They focused on growing their portfolio of offerings and brands based on trust and reputation. And to do so, they built a single customer digital identity called Takeda ID, which is a strategic component in the technology backbone that can be shared and interacted by various parts of the business and by patients, payers, healthcare providers, product R&D, and so forth, with the goal of providing an experience that's in line to what their customers would use when they interact with digital services in their daily lives. Things like Netflix or Uber, or when you shop on Amazon. So in Takeda's global identity journey, step one was taking the learnings that they had from their workforce implementation and taking the insights to grow the business. This includes centralizing all employees in one directory in a single HR first system. And then it's about centralizing identity management, governance, authentication, user provisioning, and then being able to synchronize that downstream. Step two of this journey was focused starting on the customer identity journey from a more of a security and scale and efficiency perspective. Centralizing that exposure to mitigate risk. This means that legal and compliance teams were brought in from the beginning to ensure successful projects for a peace of mind. And Takeda had to solve for the scale issue. Before they were dealing with 1.8 million healthcare providers, and now they're dealing with 20 million patients. Scale is top of mind as they think about how to roll this out to their customers. Step three is really about growing the business strategically through a single global ID. And this has two facets. I want to start with a quote by Mike Towers, the CISO for Takeda. You cannot have a digital relationship if you haven't solved for identity. And you cannot build personalized experiences if you don't know who you're building them for. Having a single global identity really helps Takeda both internally and externally. Internally, apps can now be developed faster, they can be rolled out globally while maintaining security posture, and each brand can really build to their potential instead of thinking about the plumbings of identity. From an external perspective, this really allows Takeda to build secure, trusted experiences that makes their users feel safe and protected when they interact with Takeda. And new opportunities that are uncovered, like connections between CRM systems and Takeda ID, they can now connect known contacts from their marketing database to the actual patients at the doctor's office. There's some immediate impacts with the initial rollout, but also some long-term benefits. In the short term, Takeda mitigates security risks and exposure. And in the long term, Takeda is really able to engender trust directly with patients. And that's huge. Because being in healthcare, there's this social and emotional responsibility that companies have to their customers. And Takeda is able to do so by delivering that trusted digital experience that allows their users to feel safe. By building their core business on top of a consistent customer identity, Takeda was able to offer new services and new revenue streams, such as oncology therapy and patient monitoring, in ways that they were never able to explore before. If you're interested in learning more about Takeda's global identity implementation in detail, we have an awesome Octane session tomorrow you should check out.
So thanks, Molly. Plenty of opportunity, right? And it's great to see that identity plays a key role on this. I guess something very important to tell is why identity is such a key component of these. So when you think about the word, especially today, uh, 2021 and onwards, you can see that identity is a very strategical linchpin to organizations. Because we move more to a remote work or dynamic work kind of setup, we know people are accessing those systems from many places, and sometimes you cannot wrap around your network security or productivity stack around how dynamic people would go through the system. So it is coming from a network you don't have control to another network and application you don't as well. Second thing is that the same goes for devices. Many people interact not only on mobile devices, but their own devices in order to work with your company. That's not only true for your employees, but even more so for your partners. So it's hard to get a tight control of the devices you don't have a way of manage or take care of. For customers, this is imperative. And finally, those applications, those systems, they are pretty much everywhere. The scale of PaaS infrastructure, SaaS service, make them a compelling solution. Right today, you can have a server running in 30 seconds. You don't need to go and procure servers or find a place to host them up and run energy redundancy. And for all these scenarios, identity plays a key role because it is that thing that's still over there, and that provides not only a great point in place to drop in better security, but also to delight your customers, delight your employees, your partners. And when we think about those opportunities Molly told us about, number one, dynamic work, number two, consolidation, and number three, customer experiences, you can see that many identity projects will give you that tailwind you need to kick off those efforts or to bring attention to those efforts in your organization. It is great for a technical professional like me because I can implement those and I can get the buy-in from my organization, my managers, my C-suite. And it's great for leaders because they can find the investments they need to do to prove that model. So you can start small and grow excitement within the organization, like Experian did, for example. And this is really great. So these are 6 projects. We're gonna make this slide available, and within every single line here, you actually have a link to an ebook, to an implementation guideline, to a roadmap that will help you accomplish those projects. 2 projects, I'll pick it up here real quick, that really excite me are, for example, the deployed customer identity that really helps you bridge the gap in between how you would do internal IT and how you would do identity for your customers, the things you should have in mind. So, for example, friction is very important on the customer side. Having a seamless omni-channel experience is very important, and identity, depending on how you configure, plays a key role on that. Other project I'm really excited about is M&A agility. So we know that by the time you merge with a company, the choices you're going to make at that time and the time to value you can extract from a IT consolidation standpoint, they are critical. If you do things right, you're going to set up for a great M&A experience and get more revenue fast. If you take a lot of time, you have growing pains, you start creating redundant mechanisms like batch processes to take care of that, and that can be burden in the future. So all these projects will give you those ideas, things you can think about, and how you can get them going. And I highly recommend you to come here and click those links and check things out. It's really great. In these projects we talked about, they are applied by many of our customers here at Okta and many identity users across the globe on different solutions. So when you think about these, not only look at how to, but look at your peers, look at great companies that are also implementing that, connect to them, exchange ideas, because having the experience running through these is invaluable. By the way, we have many sections here at Octane with customers that are going through the journey on different facets. For example, University of Newcastle going through their zero trust maturity, as well as FedEx, as Molly said, Takeda's journey, she mentioned, also JetBlue's. There are many, many great customers, many organizations running through this journey right now, learning the good, the bad, in how to make it even better. And yeah, so take advantage of those. Molly, do you have any fave here?
I think all the, it's one thing for you and me to talk about identity and the importance and the value of it. It's another just to hear it from our customers who really reap the benefits, not just from, IT efficiency standpoint, but how they're building their business around identity. So I strongly encourage everybody to, hear it from one of our customers. So I will wrap it up really quickly. Today we talked about dynamic work and what does that mean for zero trust and building a security control that's rooted in identity. We talked about IT consolidation. It is coming, and 2021 is the year for it. So are you ready when your CEO asks you about your strategy to consolidate IT? And then three, we kind of talked about the customer experiences that you can build on top of identity. This is not just about streamlining operations or cost efficiencies, but it's really opening up, the canvas for what is possible in the future and how you're able to generate new business models on top of identity. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We really appreciate it that you made it to this point of the session. And be sure to go check out our cool customer sessions that we have coming up over the next 2 days.
Yeah, and if you have questions, we're here on the chat room answering those. So feel free to shoot them up. We're gonna provide you not only links to great materials we have, as well as other great customer references. Thank you again. Have a great Octane.